generations. And now, the power of two restores the one.
We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back for another video. In today's video, we are talking about the new Inside Out 2. It has been a long time coming. I think it's been about 9 years is what I've been hearing, because the first one came out in 2015, and now we are here in 2024, finally getting the sequel. The first one, was a good movie, and it had a great reception among fans. And after that movie came out, a lot of people were speculating, like, if they made an Inside Out 2, they can make it about her, like, teenage years and all these different things about those years. And you know what? It's funny because the movie was basically written kind of by the audience. Like, they didn't have to change very much from what the audience wanted. So it's really cool to see this movie come to fruition. And I am happy to tell you that I think this movie is phenomenal. There's only one very minute detail that I wish was a little different, but that does not take away from the entire rest of the film, and we'll talk about that a little later. But here, we're going to go ahead and give our thoughts without spoilers for the beginning, and then we'll move into the spoiler section. So, like I said, this movie I thought was really, really good. I thought the story and like the pacing back and forth between the emotions and what's happening in Riley's life were very well put together, and everything seemed very seamless. Like when the emotions would make decisions, it made sense and just worked really well with what Riley was doing. And if you kind of like, if you're our age, where we've already went through the years of being a teenager, you can kind of almost see yourself like in her shoes, kind of a thing. So um, I would say if you're a fan of the original, definitely see this movie. And if you have any interest at all, this is a great Disney movie. There's a couple of things I think make it really good that don't have spoilers. One is that they stayed true to their characters, right? They brought back the all the originals, and then they have some new ones that really, really work well in this movie. But the second thing that I thought was really good about the movie was that it had like nowhere anywhere some sort of political agenda. This was basically just a movie to go and enjoy, and that's what I think Bob Iger has been really pushing for the Disney studios to do nowadays, is because they had such a rough patch with trying to send messages that now when we just get, basically pure entertainment, plus we can actually, all of us can connect to the movie. I think that's what really helps it thrive. So I think this movie is great. Sarah, what do you think?
I would have to agree. I liked them bringing back the original characters, especially Amy Poehler, just because she does such a great job as being Joy. They did a good mix of what's going on in Riley's actual world versus what's going on in her brain. I feel like they had a good balance, like the first movie, between stuff that's going on. It's gonna sound like I'm saying the same thing, but I'm not. Stuff that Riley's going through versus stuff that her emotions are going through in her brain. Like for example, Imagination Land, right? We went there in the first movie. There's a segment in there in this movie. I'm not gonna just describe what that is because I'm trying to stay spoiler free, but that's what I'm trying to get at, is that there's stuff that's going on in Riley's brain that we visit as well. And I feel like they did a good job of balancing what's going on in both realms. The new characters were great. I the ennui one I thought was kind of boring, and I guess that's kind of the point, is because ennui means boredom. But
We
I
should we should
feel like
probably say who they all are, because so we got the ennui here,
yep,
and then we got envy, the small one, and then we got anxiety and embarrassed or embarrassment, one of the two.
yep. Yeah, so the embarrassment one, you can see he's got the sweatshirt pulled, which is very much something you do if you're embarrassed, right? Anxiety, their hair is a mess and they just look like they're scared of everything, which is kind of what anxiety is, right? The envy one, she's got the really big eyes, she's green with envy, and she's very, very small and short, so definitely envious of, people who are
Taller.
huh?
Envious of people that are taller.
Yes, thank you. My mind is we've had such a rough streak this year with movies not being as great as we were expecting. And this one being so amazing, it's kind of like taking me aback. Like, wow, I can't believe that was such a great movie. But that's a good thing. But the ennui one, which means boredom, Joy calls them wee wee, which is kind of funny. Uh, that was one that kind of fell flat for me a little bit. It's very much like Fear from the first movie, where I feel like they're almost like a background character. They're not one of the main ones. They don't have a whole lot of lines. They don't contribute a whole lot. Um, which is kind of interesting because I feel like the Ennui character and the Fear character look very, very similar. They are different colors, but they're both, very tall and skinny and just kind of similar shaped people or emotions, I guess, if you will. Um, but aside from that, there were a lot of kind of tongue-in-cheek things like learning about what sarcasm is and stuff that I thought was fun. So there's a lot of jokes that a kid's never gonna understand, but as an adult, you'll understand. Uh, but at the same time, I feel like there's enough for the kids to enjoy and for the adults to also enjoy. It's just all around a really good movie.
I thought what else was really cool was like all the decisions and stuff that were going on in Riley's brain, that these emotions were sorting out and stuff. I felt like all of them were very, very plausible things to be thinking of. Like there wasn't really anything where I was like, that would never happen, or they would never think that. It was like, yeah, that is what goes through your head, especially at that age. So I think they did a very good job of making it relatable, not just for us watching in hindsight of when we were that young, but just being like, if someone that is that age is watching it, it's like, yeah, everybody goes through that. So it's like, it's making people or kids not feel so alone in those situations, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree.
Let's go ahead and give the movie a rating. So I wholeheartedly believe that this movie is my second 10 out of 10 film of 2024. The only other one that I've done is a completely other end of the spectrum film being um, uh,
Love Lies Bleeding.
Love Lies Bleeding. Thank you. I could picture the characters, but I was blanking on the name. But yeah, Love Lies Bleeding is my other one. This one more towards the kids spectrum of the movies, and it was awesome. I can't say enough about the film. I'm so happy that there is a movie that came out from Disney where I'm just like, I want to see what their next project is. See what next project Pixar puts out, because Disney's animated studio still has to show us that, everything is great. Although I did really like Turning Red. That was pretty good, but this is a great
That
step right.
wasn't that also Pixar?
It actually that might have been everybody's like, "You're not a true Disney fan."
Yeah, that's a Pixar movie.
All right, well, Disney animation, you're not off the hook yet. Whoopsie. So yeah, 10 out of 10 from me.
I am also at a 10 out of 10. This is going to be my first of the year. While I did see Love Lies Bleeding, I wasn't part of that rating system for a handful of different reasons. But this is my first 10 out of 10. Are there some things that are like minor and nitpicky that I would change? Yes. Does a 10 out of 10 mean a movie is perfect? No. But it's really, really good. And I feel like it's setting the bar for any animated movie that's coming out nowadays. This was a good one.
I'm trying to differentiate which ones are just Disney, because Disney animated studios and Disney Pixar are different, but a lot of the things that I pull up are meshing the two together. I'm trying to see what have been like the last 5 Disney animated films that have come out or something like that, but not super important, I suppose. Uh, all right, so we're gonna roll into the spoilers section. Maybe Sarah can look up what the last 5 were while I begin this little discussion. So this movie is covering essentially Riley's puberty years. She is becoming a teenager, and this movie is centered around she's big into hockey, and so the big idea is that she's going to a hockey camp, and her friends that she's normally playing hockey with, they're a trio, and the other 2 are going to another school, and so this is what really throws Riley's emotions into a mix. Um, so one night she's sleeping and she like can't turn her brain off, just like we do as people, and our main emotion group from the first movie, they all get up. They're like, "What is that noise?" And we see the construction crew coming through the emotion area, and they're changing everything or I should say, updating everything because we have some new emotions coming in. And so they update the like circuit board that they mess with, and they're supposed to be putting in like new housing, like living areas for these people because they all have their own like little bunk. And so this is where we meet anxiety, and anxiety has all of anxiety's baggage. So that's kind of like a funny adult comedy joke, not like adult raunchy, but like us as adults recognize that, but kids probably won't. So that's kind of like our fun little moment there. But then we also meet envy, embarrassment, and what's the other one's name? It's a fancy word for boredom.
Ennui.
Ennui. All right. And then ennui. So the regular emotions that we've had in the past, they're kind of like, what are you doing here? And essentially the circuit board had, all of these other emotions added into it. The regular emotion, people are like pushing buttons, and Riley is doing some crazy things, like in relation to what they're used to, because the circuit board is different. Um, I believe the scene where Riley is, projecting these emotions is like her mom wakes her up and she's like screaming at her. It's like all these weird things that as a teenager, it's like, why is this kid doing these things? But they're going through changes, so that's kind of the answer to it. Um,
Like all their emotions are heightened.
right. I believe this is right before she's getting ready to leave for hockey camp.
Yeah. Did you want to know what those Disney movies were
Yeah, what were the
before we
last like
get
5?
too far down? So in most recent to least recent, we had Wish, the
Okay.
Haunted Mansion remake, the Little Mermaid live action. I was gonna say remake, but it's the live action one. Um, Strange World, which we have not seen. And then Encanto. I'm not sure if that was 5 or not. I lost count. I wasn't counting. But the one before that was Jungle Cruise.
So what are the 5 latest animated films?
Animated specifically,
Yeah, so you said
before
Wish.
this. So Wish, Strange World, Encanto, Raya, and that's the end of the list that I pulled, which is movies.disney.com.
Interesting.
And
So
That's only four, because all the rest of them are either live action ones or they're Pixar or Marvel or some variation of that, like the Indiana Jones movie, which is kind of a one-off.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely haven't seen Strange World, um, which is interesting because I feel like we usually keep up on the Disney stuff, but yeah, that one slipped through the cracks for sure. But even in that list that you gave us, I think Encanto is like probably the one super popular one out of the whole group. The other ones I didn't hear like amazing receptions over. Um,
Wish is starting to gain some traction a little bit once it dropped on Disney Plus.
yeah, and then people, didn't have the media to tell them what to think. I mean, I liked Wish, but a lot of people supposedly didn't. But all right, we should get back to Inside Out too. So,
So she's going to hockey camp.
right, she's going to hockey camp, and like I said, she finds out from her friends that the other two are going to a different school, so that means they won't be on the same hockey team together. And so when they get to the place where the camp is being held, Riley meets somebody new. And so she has kind of this decision to make whether she follows the person that's going to be a part of her new school and that she could, invest in a friendship that she will have for the next 4 years.
Well, and she really idolizes this girl because she's like a year or two older than her, but set all these records for becoming really great at hockey at a young age. So Riley's wanting to follow in her footsteps.
Was that Valentina?
I think so.
I think so too. So she has this new friend. Well, she has to decide between this friend or, still invest a lot of time in her friends that will be leaving her. And so she kind of has this decision to make. And this is when basically anxiety takes over the board and does a few things and shows basically Joy that, if you have this plan or just a bunch of random plans, that maybe, things could be better for Riley. And so basically, Joy is proven wrong that what Joy's idea was isn't so great. It was kind of like making Riley become a very awkward talking person. Um, and then anxiety is the one that took over and made everything better. And so basically, what this does is that anxiety and all the new people gang up on the original people and dispense of them. They send them off into like was it the suction tube or something?
Yeah, it was supposed to be like where they were sending memories to be forgotten. So anything that was like embarrassing or that they didn't want to remember, they'd send off to this place in the back of your brain.
Right. And not only did they send the emotions, but she also sent this thing that was basically like the overall essence of what Riley's thoughts are. It looks kind of like a tree in a way. And they break off the old one and put it in the forgotten area, and they're trying to grow a new one. At least anxiety is trying to. And so as anxiety is putting Riley through all these different uh I wouldn't say events, but like conversations and moments with her friends, all these different memories are building up a new identity for Riley.
Yeah,
Uh,
trying to change the core of who she is.
right. That's probably a better way to say it, the core of who she is. So now we got them all separated. We got the new crew that's handling the board, and then our older crew is essentially trying to get to
They're
where was
they're trying to get to the back of Riley's brain so
right.
they can find that forgotten area. And so they're going through like all these halls of memories and whatnot. They go through the construction areas. They
Oh, wait a minute. So a second ago we had said that they were sent there, and I was like, well, wait a minute. Doesn't it mean they'd already be there? They were thrown in jail.
oh yes.
Yeah, they were thrown in jail, and they met some of Riley's like deep dark secrets and things that she liked that she's trying to like stow away, essentially. Like there's a video game character that she loved, and now she, you know, doesn't think about him anymore, which is really cool because he's voiced by one of the YouTubers that we watch, Young Yeah. That was really cool. But like her deepest, darkest secret is like a big dark monster. And then there was a cartoon that she watched when she was younger that was down there too. So kind of like your, I don't know, guilty pleasure of, you know, things that you really like but you don't want to tell anybody. So that's kind of one of her things. And so our crew is able to break out of this area, out of this cell, and then they take their journey to try to find, you know, where things are forgotten, the back of the brain or whatever it is. And so we have a long journey with our group. But again, they kind of go back and forth between what's happening with Riley and what's happening with them. Uh, Essentially, Riley is trying to not only impress her new friend, but she's also trying to impress the coach so that she can be on the hockey team. This person that she looks up to, her friend, was one of the youngest people to ever do it. And so she wants to do everything that she can to, you know, fit in and then also potentially become the next person that is super young to be on the high school team. So she's doing everything she can, and anxiety is doing everything that anxiety can to make these things happen. Um, but of course, crazy things happen along the way that aren't always the best. So, like one of the cool, at least one of my favorite spots that they all come across is there is a moment where Riley is hanging out with her friends, the new friends, and they ask her like what kind of music does she like to listen to, and at this point the emotions are like at this chasm. Is that what it would be called?
It hasn't happened yet, but yes. So our original group is flowing down a river. It's not the train of thought. It's oh my gosh, what is that called again?
Something, a stream of conscious.
Yes, the stream of consciousness. So they're flowing down through that, trying to get to the back of Riley's brain, and I think this is like one of the only things that the Ennui character does. But when Riley says what band she likes, the girl she's trying to impress is like, "Oh yeah, I liked that when I was in middle school too." All these girls are high schoolers, so that sounds, like she's a weirdo. So she's like, so that's when Ennui says it sarcastically, so she learns sarcasm, and that's when in her brain a chasm arrives. Like all of a sudden the river splits and now it's a giant waterfall because there's a chasm there. And they call that the sarcasm. So they're trying to call out to the construction workers on the other side, like joy and sadness, fear and anger. But on the other side, they hear everything they're trying to say sarcastically, like, "Oh, you're the best construction workers ever." Well, you're the best construction workers ever. Like super, that was a really bad impression, but you know what I mean. Um, yeah. So there was sarcasm.
I thought that was genius. Oh, and so while they're doing this too, there there's one of the tubes that like before they went on their journey, they wanted somebody to be back in the main area so that once they have that like core of what Riley is that was thrown out, that they can push the button to bring him back. So Sadness was separated from the group. Sadness has been going up the tunnel and trying to get back herself. But eventually, the new group needs memories to take a look at and use.
They're
And
trying to think of what bands do we know that would be cool that these high schoolers would think is cool.
right, and so when those memories get rushed into the tube, it also pours sadness out, so she doesn't have to, you know, keep climbing, so to speak. So she ends up finding like a little room in the back to hide, But go ahead.
One of the callbacks to the first movie at this spot, though, is she's trying to remember any songs or any artists that she might know of. And they play that gum commercial again because that tune was stuck in her head in the first movie. So I thought that was a fun callback.
I didn't even remember that. Sarah had to explain it to me.
Well, they played it over and over in the first one, and it really got stuck in my head. So
Let's see. So Riley eventually, like as she's, as she's going along, she's becoming more and more friends with this new group and not paying as much attention to her other friends. And she finds out that Val basically, like when she became the youngest freshman or youngest player on the hockey team, I should say, she did, I think she scored 2 goals in a scrimmage game or something like that. And so Riley takes it upon herself to be like, well, I have to do better than that if I want to, make the team and guarantee myself. And so her goal is to end up doing that. But as her and the new group are snooping around, they eventually go by the coach's office and they tell Riley that this red book that is on the coach's desk basically has her notes in it saying, whether people are making the team or if they're not going to make the team. And so Riley wants to find out what the coach thinks of her. So eventually she wants to sneak into the room, which this is an interesting, I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place with the emotions, but this was a pretty cool one too, because anxiety, like, when we think about when we have anxiety and we're having all these crazy thoughts run through our minds where these thoughts aren't even happening, we're just making them up. It was really cool to see this because it was kind of like a big open office room with cubicles, and it's just different emotion, or I don't know if they're technically emotions, but they're
So,
workers.
so this was an imagination land because Joy's trying to find a way to get back to the back of the brain or the back of her mind. And so they go through imagination land, and of course, it looks nothing like what she remembers from when Riley was a kid. And that's when she finds the office that you're referring to with all the different workers.
Right, and the workers are all like creating the worst case and or like worst possible things to be happening, which is what happens with anxiety. And it's interesting because anxiety just wants the best one. Like when they send all these ideas, anxiety is waiting to push the button to do the best possible one. But joy well, our whole group intervenes, but Joy is the one leading the group and basically rallies all these dudes to, stop with the crazy thoughts and try to be more positive and more happy about things to try to help her. Um, I don't remember exactly is the part where she's sneaking into the office, right?
Yes, I believe. Well, it's when she
When she's hiding on the other side of the
not,
door.
not quite. This is when she's laying in bed at night because it's the night before the big game where she's going to find out if she makes it or not. And Joy is able to calm everybody down enough that Riley goes to sleep.
Oh,
And
that's right.
then Joy's group uses these big air balloons, like parade style balloons, to keep going. And or I might be mixing up the two events, but the next event that I'm going to talk about, I'm not sure if it happened before or after that Imagination Land. But what happens is a brainstorm. Anxiety is having a brainstorm. What does that mean? Well, Joy and her group is in Riley's brain, so there's like a literal storm happening with light bulbs falling from the sky because she's having a brainstorm. There's a tornado, and there gets to be this really big orange light bulb that winds up being sucked into the main little I'm gonna call it the dormitory where the control board is, where anxiety is. And so anxiety's really excited to have this giant idea. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know. That idea was to go check out the red notebook then, right?
I thought it was her way of being successful. So like getting the 3 goals in the game. That's what I thought it was, but
It could be. I'm not entirely sure.
yeah, she goes to sneak into the office. She reads the book and notices that the book says that Riley is not ready. So the coach is planning on not having her be a part of the team. And so I think that's when Anxiety gets the big idea to
Oh. Mhm.
to get the 3 goals to try to impress. But
That
we
makes
are
sense.
heading towards the end of the movie because we end up going to the game. Riley is doing, she has like all these different thoughts of how to be better. Like some of them are, don't pass the puck to other players. Just shoot the goals yourself. Be the center of attention, essentially. And so
Trash
that's
talk the other team.
yeah, trash talking the other team. And so that's what Riley tries to do. She tries to be a one-person army while playing hockey. And if you know anything about hockey, that's not the best thing to do. Um,
But she's changed the core of who Riley is from I'm a good person to I'm not good enough.
right. And so she gets 2 goals, and so she matches what Val can do. But then when she's trying to get her 3rd goal, she is not being very successful, and she eventually plows right into one of her friends. Uh, Accidentally, of course, but because she's kind of blinded by her own ambitions, that's what causes the problem. And so Riley gets a penalty, so she has to go to the penalty box and sit for her 2 minutes. And what's interesting here is that Anxiety is like, we need to figure out a way to make this better. We need to like, send it back in the right direction. Like we started off so good. How are we gonna, get that 3rd goal? And so Anxiety just goes through essentially an anxiety attack. It's like going back and forth all over the board. And
Well, part of what's happening here too that's inducing that anxiety attack, aside from what you mentioned, is that Joy and her group finally reach the back of the brain and find that core, and they have to figure out how to get back because when they call to Sadness to have her send them back through the tube, anxiety destroys the tube. So their way back to like their main home office is gone. And we actually get a really funny scene here because one of the things that we found in that jail cell earlier at the beginning of the movie, aside from that video game character that Jeremy was talking about, was also the cartoon she used to like as a kid. It was Bluefy, which personally I think is a play on Bluey, even though the character much more resembles like Mickey Mouse or Dora, because they have this thing called Pouchy, which is basically a fanny pack where you can call it for help, just like Dora's backpack or the map or Mickey Mouse's Oh Toodles. So if you know any of those cartoons, it's very much like that, very much audience interaction style for children.
which is
But
funny because when we first meet that character, they actually flip the angle of like the character's talking to us as the audience, but then it flips to the perspective of like the other emotions, so it looks like the character is just talking to a wall.
mhm,
That was kind of funny.
yeah. So when they're in the back of the mind, they need to find a way out. Well, who do you call? Well, in this situation, they call Pouchy. So they all call Pouchy, very much like you would call Toodles in the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, if you're familiar with that. So they call Pouchy. Do you have anything that can help us? And this is probably Anger's best scene of the whole film, at least in my opinion, because he he gets upset that Pouchy is taking forever. Like, I have an apple, I've got this dynamite, and he's like, that's it. So Anger just like basically shoves his hand down Pouchy's throat because that's the opening of the fanny pack, and he's trying to figure out what he can use to be able to find a way out. Um, but Joy's idea, and she's kind of going through an identity crisis a little bit throughout this whole journey of everybody always looking up to her and her not really always having the right ideas because anxiety appears to have everything figured out, even though they're kind of a mess. Um, but she gets this idea of like all these memories that we shoved to the back of the mind. We're gonna use dynamite to basically explode our way into an avalanche up into the main memory pool that creates who we are. And how are we going to avoid all these bad memories from going into that pool of who we are? We don't know yet. We'll figure it out later. Well, they're able to use the dynamite to get there to try to re-put back that core of who Riley is, but all these old memories that were at the very back of her brain that she'd forgotten about are now all flooding to the surface, and she's remembering all these different things. It's kind of it's like when you're having a panic attack and you remember all of these things that you tried to forget, and it's suddenly all these memories that like are the worst possible things you've ever done. Even though that doesn't really make you a bad person, it makes you feel very anxious, right? Like a panic attack. So that's part of what's going on in addition to what's happening in the hockey game.
Right. And one of the things I thought was really interesting about this scene is so like eventually Riley needs to calm down, right? And so what was interesting to me is when she is in the process of calming down, she's like touching the bench that she's sitting on. Like there's this practice where you try to reground yourself, where you're like getting in touch with your other senses to try to calm you down. And I feel like that's kind of what she did there.
Absolutely, I think you're right.
So as she gets herself grounded a little bit, I try and remember what happened in the emotion side of things. I think basically the group is at the main hub and they pull anxiety out of the anxiety attack, and Joy is able to, uh, well, she tries to put the one that they found back into the spot to make like the core of what Riley is, but then they rip it off because it looks like at the bottom of the core that something is trying to, go up and grow as a new core. And so when they rip off the old one that they had just found and brought back, a new one appears. And what's really cool about it is that because of all these memories that flooded in and they're like from all different perspectives, now it's not just one solid core. Like it's not just the blue core or just the orange core, which was like the anxiety core. Now it's just, you know, as we grow up, we have tons of different, identities. It depends on what our mindset is in the moment, so to speak. So I thought that was really cool. But Riley recovers. She gets back on the ice and finishes the game. They do a lot of like slow-mo things. I didn't really get why they did that. It just shows that she was happy again, I suppose. Um, But essentially, this movie wraps up with Riley waiting to see if she made the team, and she opens up her phone to see if she made it or not. And the thing that we are left with is that she smiles at her phone. And so we're led to believe that she made the team. And then the last thing after that, there is a mid-credit scene, which was kind of funny. Joy goes back to the locked area, and she's asking the dark secret, what is the dark secret? And did you happen to look it up? Is that what you were typing?
No, I didn't. I've got something different to share.
Okay, you can share that really quick while I look it up.
So if you Google Inside Out 2, and I think it happens if you Google Inside Out 1 as well, but if you just do Inside Out, it's not going to come up. So you have to do Inside Out 1 or Inside Out 2. But a little game will pop up where you can launch memories onto the screen. They just look like little colorful balls, but if you know anything about the movie, you know that those are the memory balls. So that's kind of cool. And the second thing that I was going to share is about the casting. So There's some interesting things going on with the casting. I'm gonna let Jeremy touch on one of them just because he was the one that picked up on it. But something that I don't think you picked up on yet was the hockey coach is actually voiced by Yvette Nicole Brown. And if the name doesn't ring a bell, the person definitely will. If you've seen, and this is just what Jeremy and I remember her from, but if you've seen Drake and Josh,
Oh
Drake's
yeah.
movie theater boss is Yvette Nicole Brown. She was also in a very minor part in The Office that I remember her from, and I'm sure she's done other things way better than those two examples. Those are just the ones that I know her from.
She's in a Lego Star Wars show too. I think it's the summer vacation one. The thing that I picked up on when I was reading through IMDb is that fear was replaced and so was disgust. So I thought, was it John or Josh? Oh, Bill. Neither. Bill Hader was the original voice of Fear, and he no longer is. Now it's Tony Hale. And then Disgust was Mindy. Is it Kaling?
Kaling, I think,
Kaling? Mindy Kaling? And now it's Lisa Lapira?
or maybe Liza.
Liza, maybe? But I find that interesting. Why would you replace those people? But I don't recognize, well, I kind of recognize Tony Hale from his picture. The woman I do not recognize. So maybe it was budgeting, but, or I think the more better explanation would be scheduling with the other people. Maybe it just didn't happen. But, so I noticed that I did look up what was the dark secret. Is that she,
Before you get to that dark secret, the other thing that I was going to note, because I think it's kind of cool, is Anxiety is voiced by Maya Hawke, who we know her from Stranger Things.
yep.
So it's kind of neat to see her be in another big role outside of that. I understand this is just a voice acting role, but it's still a pretty big film. So I'm excited for her to have something in her career besides Stranger Things, since I know that's coming to a close.
Yeah. The dark secret. So when we heard it, I thought she said rock, but the dark secret is that Riley burned a hole in the rug at
Mhm.
home. But it's funny because Joy is like, "That's what your secret is? I thought it was that we peed in the pool." So that's
Well,
kind
and
of
then the secret goes and runs and hides back to embarrassment. Like not the emotion embarrassment. I just mean he's feeling embarrassed, so he goes and runs and hides.
right, and locks himself back in the safe.
Yep.
So the one nitpicky thing that I thought was that I wish would have happened in this movie, and again, it did not deter from the 10 out of 10, was that I was hoping that we were going to learn that Riley did not make the team. And I wish that would happen because then it shows kids that even sometimes when you try your best, that things don't always pan out. But like they could even expand on it and make it so that maybe she did not make the team, but then the coach talks to her and says like, "Hey, you're just not ready yet, but hey, we're going to put you in this other league so that you can get some practice and then try out again next year." Like just show kids that it is okay to fail and there's ways to deal with it. That's the whole thing she's been going through this whole movie is how to deal with her emotions, how to deal with the things that are happening around her, and so I thought that would have been perfect, but
Now, Jeremy, I gotta ask you.
what?
We started this movie review or discussion by talking about how we're happy there's no political agendas, and now here you are wanting to put one in.
That's not what I mean. There's been some much heavier political agendas in the movies. I I would even say that saying that she made the team was a political agenda to a point because we're all told that we get a blue ribbon for participation trophies, kind of a thing. Like yes, she scored the two goals and she, finished the rest of the scrimmage on a high note, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, you would make the team. So I just I don't know. I think it would have been a way to put in a small lesson for those kids that don't make the team, and it would, bring light and say like, hey, this is okay, and this is how we can, move on from it. This is how we can try to better prepare for next time. Because it's not always that you try out for something and you get it automatically. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes the organizations or teams that you try out for have an alternative for you. So, like I was saying, where she could say, you didn't make it this time, but you could get better with this. Like for me, when I was in high school, for a jazz band, for example, the high school that I went to, not to be bragging, but their jazz ensemble was known like big time because of how good they were. And not everybody could be in that band. They had a set number of what they needed for each instrument, and then, they went out and did their thing. Everybody else got funneled into the second group where anybody could join. And so then you could, be in that second group, get a year under your belt of experience, and then try out for the top band again the next year. And so, there's ways to help kids understand that, failure is a thing, and then you can just put in the effort to better yourself, and not everything will just, kind of fall into place. It would be great if everything did, but it just doesn't. But
Yeah.
I know.
That you do have a good point. I just like to poke fun. But you're right. There is a difference between the heavy political agendas that have been happening in a lot of movies recently compared to minor life lessons, which is where this would have been a very easy one-liner or one scene to add to get that point across.
Right. And I know there's people that will probably hear me say that and they're like, absolutely not. That's so dumb. But I don't know. I feel like society has changed a bit much with the everybody gets what they wanted kind of a thing. And I think kids are kind of losing that idea that, sometimes you're gonna lose. And we have to deal with that. We have to know how to deal with that. And, if we don't learn that at an early age, then it's gonna hurt. That's gonna be a brick wall that really hurts when you run into it as an adult. So, um, again, just a small thing. It's a choice that Disney made, and it's fine. It doesn't break the movie for me. It's just something I thought would have been kind of a neat way to do it instead of what we got. But I
Yeah.
still love the movie.
We did at least see, which makes me feel a little bit better about this and not having it be the blue participation ribbon thing that you were talking about, is she did put in some serious effort. I know this was only like a 3-day camp, but she went there really early. She did tons of extra practice. She did tons of extra drills. She, really kind of tried to figure out a way to be the best and put in the effort. So at least there's that.
Right. Yeah, they definitely showed that she put in certain efforts that other teammates did not do. Um, so yeah, that is a good thing that they showed that too. Because if she just made it based on just showing up and then it's like bam, you're another one of the youngest players to ever get the team, that probably wouldn't have gone over as well. But yeah, there were different scenes where it was showing that she was above and beyond. Let's see. Is there anything else you wanted to mention about the movie?
Just overall a really good movie. I loved it.
Yeah, there was one other emotion that popped in every now and then, but it was kind of funny that they kept like shutting it up. They were like, "Go back to where you're from. She's not old enough yet for you." And it was nostalgia. It was like an old grandma character that kept coming out, and it's like, I'm 30 years old, like me. I'm 30 years old and I have nostalgia. What do you mean she's too young for that? Like the emotion makes it seem like she has to be super old. I don't know what age they would accept that older nostalgia to come out.
I think Anxiety said something about like, I know you're excited to be out here and I can't wait to introduce you to everybody, but we have to get through, and then she listed off a whole bunch of like life events that have to happen before they're ready for nostalgia. I remember one of them being like a graduation, and one of them I want to say was two weddings. I'm assuming she means like
One
you've
of them
been to
was
multiple weddings.
one of them was best friend's wedding.
Ah, okay. I must have misheard that then. Um, but yeah, so have
Yeah.
to get through some life events first, I guess.
Which I thought was also kind of interesting. Maybe we'll wrap it up here in a second, but I also thought it was interesting that like the nostalgia kept popping in and out and they were trying to shut it out, but some of the nostalgia was locked away. Like she was trying to suppress it. Like the cartoon characters from her childhood and the video game character. I feel like that would fall under the nostalgia category, but I didn't quite understand the possibility that they were locked away, but yet nostalgia kept wanting to pop out. Do you know what
I
I
think
mean?
the difference is that the things that were locked away were secrets. They were things she still liked, whereas nostalgia is more like, remember when this thing happened? Boy, wasn't that great.
Yeah.
Not necessarily something I still like right now.
Yeah, I can see that. All right. Well, I think that was pretty good. We did not cover every single minute detail with the emotions, but we did cover, what happened with Riley. So definitely go out and see this movie. I feel like all of the emotions had their moments. Like none of them was just. I mean, we did mention that Inui. Is that what you said the name was?
Enwa.
Enwa? Okay, I
Or
have the name pulled up.
Enwi. It is Enwi, I'm sorry. Because she calls him Wee Wee.
Yeah, I think it's a girl, Enwi, but
He, her, I don't know.
the voice actress, I believe, is a woman.
The character of boredom.
Yes. Uh, that's the only one that kind of didn't have a lot of attention, whereas all the other ones definitely did. But they all did play a part at some point for Riley's emotions. So that was really cool. Um, If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We are trying to do at least 2 movie discussions a month and sometimes more. Just depends on if we're able to go out and see some. Drops a like if you like the video and drops a comment letting us know your favorite parts of Inside Out 2 and who is your favorite emotion. Mine is hands down anger. Sarah, who's your favorite?
Ooh, I do love me some anger, but the embarrassment guy was pretty cool. I think he's the best of the new ones.
I would agree with that. Embarrassment was the MVP of the new group.
It was just funny because I don't know that he had any lines.
No, I don't know. I don't think so, but just his actions were great.
Yep.
And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.